Well, thank you. Thanks to Bob and thanks to Arvis for organizing this meeting. It's really good to talk to you. And well, I have to start by saying that we are living in Spain a very special moment, a moment in which the political order that we have, some of us have lived all their life, and has lasted for about 30 years, 35, 40 years, is coming to an end, and that's a very, very exciting moment. We don't know what is going to come afterwards. I'll try to give you a sense of what the forces are and what the situation is right now. But anyway, we're living, I don't know, it's a moment that happens once every 2 or 3 generations in which you feel that change is possible, and that's not very frequent. So I'll have to start from 2007, right? That's a moment when the crisis, the big global crisis, breaks in the United States. After a year or so, in 2008, comes to Europe, and in Spain, the crisis is felt as the end of 15 years, from 1995 to 2007, of prosperity. It was a prosperity that was based on a massive real estate cycle. It was based on home ownership. It was based on finance, particularly on the ownership of real estate property. As an inheritance of the Franco years, Spain has an enormous percentage of homeowners. It has always been moving between 70%, 80% of the houses are owned as a form of tenancy, right? This mixed up with credit, private debt, and finance created a massive prosperity cycle that went far beyond what was happening in the rest of the. You hear me well? Should I? Yeah? No, don't hand over. All right. All right, great, good. So Spain was actually, during those years, having a situation of wealth and prosperity and growth and consumption, very large consumption, much stronger than the rest of Europe, while countries like France, Germany, even the United Kingdom were sort of in a melancholic sort of situation in economic terms, 0% growth, 1%, whereas Spain will keep growing at 4 or 5% daily, and it was all based on a real estate cycle, on a very strong real estate cycle that had the political effect, and this is very important, to create the middle class, right? Let's say that from the end of the Franco years until now, really, in terms of wages, in terms of the labor situation, the wages were stagnant. There weren't that many sort of good job positions, apart from the 20% with more income in the population. But all that was sort of recomposed by or remade by the property of real estate property and credit, a very strong consumption level. So all this comes to an end in 2007, right? And the first thing that we felt, or that was felt, when the crisis came to Europe, was a very sharp rise in unemployment. Spain, during the years of the bubble, historically, Spain has had strong unemployment levels, but during the years of the bubble, and due to the massive consumption and the very strong sort of consumption demand, unemployment levels kept really low for Spanish standards. They were at 7%, 8%. They had been at 19% at the beginning of the 80s. But we saw how suddenly the unemployment levels grew dramatically. They reached very soon 20%, 25%, 26%. That came to mean 6 million people in unemployment, which is a lot. If you look at the younger generations, between 20, 30, 35, the rates will be massive. It will reach 50%, 55% unemployment. So that was the first symptom that the prosperity was coming to an end. It is important to say as well that in Spain, unemployment is very linked with precariousness, right? Spain has got the biggest percentage of temporary workers, even in the years of the bubble, or even more in the years of the bubble than in the years of unemployment, would be like 32% of the labor force, which is by far the largest in Europe. The next one, I think, is Poland, is 12%. So by far, temporary jobs, precariousness, it was well established by the time the crisis came. So what happened is really without much effort on the side of on the side of bosses, labor was shed. They just wouldn't renew the contracts, so the temporarity rate kept being lower, but the unemployment rate would be higher, right? And this was very fast and very sudden phenomena. As well, the other effect that we had is as soon as the real estate market started to be slower, private debt that had reached massive levels in the years of the bubble was felt as a problem, because no more credit was available and unemployment was of cutting off income from families. So those were the two main first symptoms that something was happening in Spain. This led to a banking crisis as well, very similar to the one you had here. Banks were filled up with real estate that wasn't worth what it was worth before the bubble, and that banking crisis led to a strong state action in the form of bailouts, etc. And also, the unemployment problem was forcing the state to act, doubling or having much more social expenses than before. So a public debt problem was created in those years, and as well, and very important, on the financial markets where the national debt is sold and bought, there was a massive cycle of speculation on the side of the big finance houses with all the debt from southern countries in Europe, right? So this led to austerity measures, which have always been there in Europe from the Maastricht Treaty onwards. That was 1992, one of the main points in the Maastricht Treaty, which was previous to having the euro, which is the common currency that we have today, was to limit state spending, state deficit to 3% per year, and to 80%. I think it's a bit less; it's 60% in terms of global debt of the government. So, of course, very very quickly, Spain was actually out of those parameters. So austerity came in, and there was there was a problem for the state in financing. There was always the fear that the state will become bankrupt. So the measures were imposed in a very dramatic way. So many countries have broken those criteria during all these years. But as long as the state could finance itself, it wasn't a problem. But Spain was on the verge of a state bankruptcy. So austerity felt imposed in a very strong way. All these sort of macroeconomic sort of figures meant that the clutches, like the financial clutches that the middle class had to form itself, disappeared, right? So what was a wealth effect during the years of the bubble became a poverty effect in a very, very, very fast way, because, of course, income was decreasing because of unemployment and precariousness, because the public expenditure was cut in a moment where the middle classes needed both health and public education, because they couldn't spend the private ones, right? And also their houses were declining in value. So this came to it was like the whole social structure was just crumbling, was just falling apart from the very rich, the 20% of the at the top are the only ones that didn't feel this at all. Behind that, everyone sort of went down very fastly and found itself with financial problems. So this led to a political crisis. I mean, this was the economical crisis, and this led to a massive political crisis. In Spain, we have two main parties, or we've had two main parties from the beginning of the 80s onwards that have worked in a bipartisan regime. That means when people get fed up with one, we just bring the other, and they lead, and they'll. I know you know the story. They will sort of have. Well, in many points, it's not only this political regime, but also in the ways prosperity was created. Spain is quite similar to the United States of the pre-2007 years. So there are. Of course, there are differences, many of them, but there are quite a few similarities that I think that are good to think about. So these two parties, the Socialist Party, which is supposed allegedly the left, but it's but it's actually sort of a center left, being sort of generous, and the Popular Party, which is center right or the right. They have followed in all these years. Of course, there are like aesthetical and cosmetic differences, but in what is social policy and economic policy, they have followed the same line, the same continual line. Just of course, let's say like the big neoliberal principles, such as promoting privatization and promoting cuts in a sort of not very strong but continual way until the crisis, and reforming the labor market in order to get workers to have less bargaining power, a bit like what this happens everywhere. But they sort of in the policies that the bubble needed to get expanded, right? A real estate bubble of that size, in which Spain was building more homes a year than France, England, and Germany and Italy together, with about 20% of the population of those countries. So it was just because it was all investment assets, right? And you know how Spain, the Mediterranean coast, is a very big tourist destination. So their houses were built until the coastline was completely full with houses. You know, infrastructures had to be built in order to open up new space for this sort of building. Mortgage laws had to be implemented. Also, political changes that the bubble needed were done by both parties. And very important, in Spain we have the political territorial organization which divides the country in 17 autonomous regions, right? And those autonomous regions, quite similar to the states here, even though it's not federal, but they have a saying in all this, because they can decide on land planning, they can decide on very important matters about education and health. And of course, they were more or less well divided between popular and socialist, and they all underwent the same policies, right? So, except, well, they undergo the same policies as well, but just to give you a picture, in Spain there's also national regions with national aspirations, which is the Basque Country, Catalonia, and Galicia. These have their own political parties and all, but they all follow the same policies anyway. So it was complete consensus on that front, right?